As I think back over the stories we've looked at so far, some amazing scenes stand out. Battles with moments of courage, sacrifice and visions of God's faithfulness, desperation and miraculous provisions. If you talk to Christians who have followed Christ for very long, almost all of them have stories of these great moments of God's intervention. But most of us also have times when we feel overlooked, forgotten, and struggle to recognize any grand plan of salvation supposedly happening in our lives. While the Bible is full of epic scenes, it is always careful to also draw our attention to the work God is doing in places the world has little attention for. God is willing to send his mightiest prophets to people most of us fail to see. Not long after Elijah's dramatic showdown with the prophets of Baal, Elijah's pupil, Elisha, recognized one of these lives others had no reason to consider. A widow came to him in a desperate situation. Deeply in debt, she was just days away from her sons being sold into slavery to reconcile what she couldn't pay. Elisha asked her a strange question. "Tell me, what do you have in the house?" Don't you think that if she had something left of value, surely she would have already sold it? Her situation was far more serious than moving some money around between accounts. She must have become even more discouraged, forced to admit she had nothing at all except a flask of olive oil. Elisha told her to go to all of her neighbors and gather as many pots and flasks as she could find, and then begin pouring. She was able to fill every single container before the oil ran out. That little flask of oil, the one she possessed, miraculously multiplied into enough oil for her to sell and pay off her debts, saving her sons from slavery. We don't know anything else about that woman or her two sons. Saved from the threat of slavery, who did they grow up to become? How did the rest of their lives play out? How did that miraculous day change the trajectory of their futures and their faith? One of the things I love about the Bible is that it isn't so rushed with plagues and prophetic battles, wars and kings, as to tell us the story of a desperate widow and how God used her smallest of possessions to rescue her whole family. The goodness of our God is so big that it overflows from the expected storyline and fills lives littered across the margins of this much larger story. The biggest of God's promises and their epic fulfillments never despise the smallest lives or situations. The size of God's salvation never washes away minor characters. In fact, it is often in these places that God's power is most movingly portrayed. Broke widows, rejected cowards, lame beggars, and an injured man bleeding along the roadside. To these, God not only speaks, but he generously invests the time of his greatest prophets and even his own son to speak hope, to meet needs, to bless each with peace and dignity, those who seem so small in the eyes of the world. The nature of our idols is that they always ask more of us than they give back. They leave us in debt. And when we desperately need their help, they always ask for just a little more. If there is one flask of oil left, they demand it too. And we suffer the consequences of their indifference. But our God is not like those idols. What little we possess becomes the means by which he does more than we could have imagined. When you look at your life, it's so easy to think there isn't much God could use. There's not much God would even be interested in. What can I sell? What can I trade? I'm not a prophet or a preacher. This isn't the kind of life God uses. But we are wrong. God looks at the little we do possess and says that this is what he will use to pour out more than we can hold. We need only trust and obey, what the widow does without question. So she did as she was told. Her sons kept bringing jars to her, and she filled one after another. Soon every container was full to the brim. At times, it is through his discipline, and other times through provision. But always, God is good, and always he is aware. There's not a detail of this creation that goes ignored. And to each of us, he is asking only that we will listen and trust the ways in which he is redeeming this world and even our little corner of it. Through things this world rejects, through the things this world sees as too small, God is still at work. God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Listen.